Hello, this is Owen Katongo Kabanda, your management and leadership advisor. So we had a question from someone asking what exactly are redundancies and how do they differ from other forms of separation with employees? Well, um, like we've done in so many other of our videos, we try to tackle the various questions that come our way. And we appreciate the patience that you show because we receive so many questions and we have to plan for this and try to find time to answer your questions. Thank you also very much to all those that are following us. If you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so and basically follow us on all the social media platforms, and we appreciate the feedback and the support. And any time that people actually call us and tell us about how they're finding the articles and the posts and the videos to be useful in your work as employees, as employers, and things of that nature. And we appreciate all the feedback. Coming to the issue of redundancy, well, redundancies in simplest term, a redundance comes about due to operational needs of the employer. Now, we have to stress this point because sometimes we see a confusion where some people want to, dismiss people and they want to put them on the list of redundancies, because people are not performing well and things of that nature. This should never be confused. We should be mindful that there are two things that normally we look at. And number one is that there are reasons for separation with employee which are related to the employee, and there are reasons for separation with the employee which are related to the employer. Now, these two should never be mixed, because the moment you mix them, then it creates a lot of problems. Because when you need to separate with an employee for reasons related to the employee, there are certain procedures that you may follow. For instance, if it is a performance issue or the conduct of the behavior of the employee is not acceptable, you will follow the due disciplinary process. It's very important to understand this part. If it is the reasons associated with the employer, this is where redundancy comes in, and it has its own processes to follow. And so in today's video, we want to now look into issues relating to redundancy. We will talk about disciplinary processes in other videos as we have been doing. Now, let's talk about redundancy. When redundancy itself simply means that the employer will not need a particular position or department of people, a particular number of people for going forward. And therefore, the employer says, we are cutting these people out because of the changes. Now, what are the reasons for redundancy? Redundancy comes about for so many reasons, but some of those, the key ones are: number one, the change in the operations relating to the business. By this we mean, if you change your business model, you were operating a particular way and now you're no longer going to be operating in this way, you can declare people redundant because the business has changed. You are now looking at other things. Maybe some departments that you had will no longer be needed, or just the numbers of people that you had will no longer be needed. So changes in the business model could result in people being declared redundant, and the employer start to separate with employees. Sometimes the second reason could be your company being taken over by another company. So if one company buys the other company, of course, the law, if you read, if you're operating in Zambia, when you read Section 28, it provides, Section 28 of the Employment Code, Act number 3 of 2019, it will give you guidance on how you can transfer contracts from one employer to another. However, in many cases, companies choose to cut everything and pay employees who were working in this particular company before they join a new company. It is seen to be a more cleaner way so that the new company doesn't have to deal with the legacy issues. And when we talk of legacy issues, these might be liabilities that this other company owed the employees. It could be unpaid salaries, unpaid gratuities, leave days, and so many other things that this current employer might have owed the employees. And so the new employer does not want to take up such liabilities. And so they make sure that everybody is declared redundant on this side, paid everything, and then they are given new contracts. And these are some of the things that we do assist a lot of companies with, especially when they are transitioning. The other reason could be that your company is undertaking projects, and at some point you have to separate with employees because this business you are doing or this project you are doing is coming to an end, and so maybe you are giving people longer term contracts, but the project comes to an end. It could be due to funding. You will no longer be receiving funding, or there are changes in your business cycles and things of that nature. And so people get to be declared redundant to positions in order for the business to continue surviving. Sometimes it just simply also means that the company is relocating. If the company is relocating, it is shutting down, basically the people get to be declared redundant. So there are so many reasons why redundancies can come about, but major to everything is like the things that we have talked about, which we have seen. Now, it's important to understand the key thing is that when all these things are happening, you need to understand the levels at which redundancy can be effected. So normally when we're working with our clients, we want to clearly understand what they are looking at in terms of what redundancy do they actually want to effect. So it's not just a matter of waking up, and we see this a lot of times. People say, no, I need to get rid of these people. No, you need to calm down, and then there's need to look at everything and understand at what level are we actually going to effect the redundancies. So we normally, from our practice, what we look at normally, we look at 4 levels. I mean, they could be depending on your consultants. It's really up to what they do, but one of the things that we normally look at are the 4 levels. The first level 1, we're looking at the redundancy being effected at a large scale. All right. Now, this is at the company-wide level. Company-wide level means that you're going to close the company. It's company-wide. Everybody being declared redundant. And this happens, for instance, when you are closing the company. So remember the things I did talk about earlier on, where for instance, one company is closing because another company is being set up, and you now sit down. If remember, we talked about transfer of contracts and things of that nature, but where the employer says no, we're not transferring the contracts, we're declaring everybody redundant. So what happens now is, remember, there are key steps which we will talk about when you're undertaking the redundancies as required under Section 55 of the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019 if you're operating in Zambia. When we talk about company-wide redundancies, it means you're going to close the entire company. What this means is that you need to sit down and calculate all the liabilities, everything that you owe the employees. That is, if there are salary arrears, gratuity if you pay such leave, pension benefits, or anything that is supposed to be paid to employees, you want to do the proper calculations. So it's we always say this, and people make these mistakes where sometimes even business owners, they just wake up and I'll close this branch, or I'll close it. Sit down and think everything through, because when you're going to close the entire company, it means there are serious decisions being made, and therefore need to sit down and then say, okay, it is final and it is in the best interest of the business that this business closes. And as we said, normally this would come about because maybe one company is taking over another company, and in this kind of works, it becomes usually easy because when we say easy, when another company is going to buy another company, there is hope for the employees that are going to be employed in the new company. So this is the part we are saying is easy. However, there are times that the company just closes completely. So this is at the level which we call company-wide level, right? That's number one. Number two is at a branch or division or section or departmental level. What do we mean by this? You could be operating as a business or as an institution or a company, whatever you call yourself. Then, due to changes in your operational needs, you then say, this department, we don't need it anymore. Remember what I said at the beginning, due to changes in your operational requirements or your business model has changed. So maybe you had a department of engineering, and then at some point now you outsource the engineering services. So you no longer need people on your payroll because this service will be done by others. It could be any other department. It could be even, I don't know, human resource. It could be the entire cleaning department, or it could be the operations department or production department. You say this department, we no longer need it because the things that they used to do maybe will be done by others, or because you have brought in some technology, or just your business has changed. So you no longer need this department. Again, at this level too, when we're looking at departments, or it will be a whole branch, you will have operations in a particular city, and you no longer need that city because the business has changed. You might have gone to a particular place looking for business, but then that which took you there maybe is no longer there. Maybe you're no longer receiving the kind of traffic you expected from this branch, so you can close it down. So at this level too of a branch or division, you are basically taking out the entire branch, or you're taking out the entire department. So what we do normally is you take out the entire department or the entire division, and even the letters that are generated, they're generated in such a way that it is clear that this branch or this department will no longer be needed, and therefore it has resulted in these redundancies. At the third level, you start looking now, it's not the company, it's not the department, you're now going down to a position. So again, like we said, you might be looking at the operations of your business changing. So maybe you are the marketing department, and now you have a marketing agency that you have signed the contract with, so you no longer need this department. So you will take this position. You will take out the position. Okay. Sometimes it's a particular position that you just don't need. The whole department remains. Okay. Remember we said company-wide, department, now position at the third level. It's a position. Sometimes you have maybe, let's say, a payroll officer position, and you now contract a service provider who's providing you with your payroll system, and they are going to help you, or the finance department. So you're narrowing down to that particular position. You don't need it. It might be a production, it might be I don't know, maybe a driver position, or it can be a manager position. Whatever position it could be, you are focusing on that position, and it could be also several positions. So you can declare people redundant because you don't need this position or these positions. This can happen. Below the position, it could now be the number. You have your departments, your company, your departments, and your positions, but within this position, at this fourth level now, we're looking at the number. It's the quantities now. So this is the fourth level at which you can declare people redundant. So now, at the fourth level, what we are now looking at is, okay, in this particular, so we now start to look at, now this is where it becomes actually interesting. It's when we're looking at the numbers. You could, for instance, have 50 employees in a particular position, but the business has changed, and you no longer need 50 people because, for instance, you've brought in some technology, and so you're saying, look, I no longer need 50 people. Probably for this kind of job, I just need 10 guys. Or maybe I just need 20. So now how do you reach the 30 that need to go? So what we normally look at now is, and I was saying this is the interesting part, because sometimes when we're working with our clients and we say, okay, you have 50 people, you have X number of people, and we need to take out X because you no longer need, and sometimes it's because also you're working out your labor costs and things of that nature, or you have just improved your operations. And then when we're dealing now with the client and we're asking, okay, now we need to reduce these numbers, the usual thing, sometimes we find people have done their own, their own lists of people who they want to go. And then it's interesting, sometimes we have this kind of conversations. Okay, so how did you arrive at, okay, you have these 50 people. How did you arrive at this 30 that need to go? And it's interesting when you start to see, um, when you're analyzing each case, and you say, no, this one has been sick. Oh, no, so this one has been sick for a long time, we don't get any value from them. This other one has, their performance has been bad for. Now this is why, remember at the beginning we mentioned that it's important to separate these two reasons relating to the employee and reasons relating to the employer. When we sometimes these conversations are very interesting, because you find people on the list of the people to go, they have put all sorts of people that have, performance issues. Or no, don't don't and we say this also even to other consultants, because sometimes we find the consultant just jumping because the client has said, no, these are the people I want to let go, they are being no, don't confuse two things. If an employee has not been performing, there is a procedure to follow. Charge those people, prove that they are not performing, fire them. It's as simple as that. Do not use redundancy to settle, personal scores. No, because I just don't like this guy. No, and that is why when it comes to that fourth level, when it's about reducing the numbers, what we then talk about is that we should focus now on using principles. And this is where now the first in, first out, FIFO comes in, or last in, first out, LIFO. What this means is that the business will then analyze and look at its own needs. Do we want to keep the people who we have been having for a long time, or we should allow these people to go? That means the oldest employees, it depends now on the years of service. So you do the numbers. Remember, at the beginning, you'd have done your computations, the length of service with the employer. You then sit down and say, do we get out of these 50, who are these 30 that need to go? Is it the oldest employees going out and us remaining with the latest employees that we employed? Or, okay, we want to still keep the old memories and how we've been operating, so we're going to take out the new guys and remain with the old employees. So these are things that we always talk about. It's important to understand that you have to apply some principles, otherwise it becomes personal. And when you are challenged as an employer, for instance, you then have a challenge proving why you chose John over Jane, because now it becomes like you are targeting people. It has to be, you could use various principles depending on your on your operations or your businesses, or what the consultants you work with. Usually for us, we prefer to go with the LIFO and FIFO, because it helps in making quick decisions. However, there could be some other considerations of depending on the business and what you really want. But again, everything that needs to be done should be done in line with the laws in the country in which you're operating. It's very, very important. Look at everything that is allowable under the laws, so that when you're arriving at the decision to take out some people, it becomes something that is very smooth without having to make unnecessary complications. So basically, this is now how you arrive at the decision of who is going. That is it the entire company? Is it the branch or department? Is it a position, or it's just the numbers that we are reducing? And it's important to understand who you want to go, so that you basically you decide in a more professional manner. Now, apart from that, there are some legal requirements for you to look at when you want to undertake now the redundancies. That is, you need to now, after everything we've talked about, first thing you have to analyze your business and see, is this the only alternative that you have? Is this the only option? If there are other options that you can have, implement those. You could place people in other positions or departments without in that way you don't declare people redundant. However, if this is the only option that you have to undertake because of the nature of the business, you then ask yourself, what are the legal requirements? And this is where, for instance, when we undertaking redundancies, remember you now have to now notify the employee, giving them 30 days notice, including the union, and you have to notify the Minister of Labor, giving them 60 days, that's 2 months notice. And when you are notifying the Minister of Labor, they require you to explain everything. Why is this redundancy coming about? Were there no options? And then what will be the calculations? What are you going to include in your redundancy package? You need to disclose that information. It's a requirement by law. If you read section 55, and also you go on to read even section 56 of the Employment Code. So it's important that you understand the legal requirements when you want to undertake these redundancies. It's not just a matter of waking up and saying, I'm declaring everybody redundant. There are procedures that need to be followed, and you don't want to be in a space where you didn't follow some procedure. And again, now we have had a lot of questions around the requirements. So now, when you now are going to undertake the redundancy, what then you should then do is to sit down. Remember what we mentioned at the beginning. You want to sit down and go file by file, and this is what we do. And it takes time sometimes because you have hundreds and hundreds of employees. You want to go file. First of all, you are going to look at the conditions of service. What is it that these employees are entitled to? You're going to go now into, you have to understand everything. You don't just wake up and say, I don't know, I think pay them this. No. What are your conditions of service? What does the law say you should pay? For instance, if the law says you have to pay 2 months basic pay for each year served as a redundancy package, you need that to calculate that. If the law says anything else, you have to follow what the law says. Secondly, you want to now calculate, to go into the employee's file and check the contract. Check what the contract says. It's important. What is this employee entitled to under the contract? Again, work out the figures, work out the gratuity, the leave days, everything that you need to calculate them, so that you now can determine the total amount that is due and payable to the employee. We'll be going into those details in our other videos, so that you then appreciate the kind of work that has to go in, just to make sure that you are really in a space where you do the correct thing. Once you do your calculations, you then make sure that you now look at the financing side. Do you actually have the money to pay? Now, there are times when maybe you don't have the money to pay. If you have the money to pay, declare people redundant. Now, in your calculations, you also work out the notice period. Okay? When we talk about the notice period, we're now saying, if your contract says give the people 1 month notice, or 3 months notice, or 6 months notice, I don't know what your contract says, you then calculate that. So you declare people redundant at a particular point, and you allow them to continue working. Now, again, these are decisions that you have to make, which we normally when we're working with our clients, we go through different scenarios, because you have two options. One option is where employees actually you declare them redundant, or you give them the notice and they continue working. Now, this has its own advantages. It allows you to prepare way in advance. It allows you to do everything, all your logistics, your calculation, everything, and they are working. Now, the danger to it, that sometimes you could find that employees, some employees may be destructive, others may start stealing, because either way they are going. So what else are you going to do? You have already told them they're leaving. So sometimes some employees may be destructive. And that also brings us to the other option. Option two is where you say, okay, you're giving the employee 1 month notice or 2 months notice or 3 months or whatever notice period is required under your contract. However, you don't require the employees to serve that notice because they have to go now. And that means that